Ray, did you go to film school?
I did not go to film school per se. I took film classes growing up throughout high school and then into college. So I didn't go to film school. I wanted to go to film school, upon graduating high school, but it just wasn't a route that I went down.
Why didn't you go?
Well, money is always an issue. And then moving away, was kind of a thing as well. So it was just a matter of, I guess, taking the leap, taking the chance, and doing it.
Yeah, I get the sense that family and friends are very important to you.
Yeah, definitely. They've been supportive, and but it also has taken some time to say or show, this is what I like to do and have continued doing over the years. Because, film school, I guess, would be a start for a lot of people. But I started in middle school, with a Handycam, Sony Handycam, and just being inspired by shows at the time like Tom Green or Mad TV. And it was things like that, it kind of made little prank videos and things like that. So it just kind of turned from that until, for school, once I got into high school, as an elective video production. So that's kind of how I got my foot sort of focused on that.
So did you have aspirations to go to film school, but someone talked you out of it, aside from money, or?
That was like maybe later on in high school, but it took some time as far as, going through school and taking these video production classes and learning that it could be a route in the future.
How do you think film school would have changed your life had you gone?
I think it might have focused me and, been a pretty direct path possibly into the film world. For me, a lot of it has been freelance work or just, kind of figuring it out along the way. So I definitely think going to film school may have been a good route. But I went to college at Palomar College in Escondido, northern San Diego. And we learned video production things there. You take different courses, motion graphics, the real basics, which I feel like I learned in high school as well. But it was a starting route. And so, yeah.
They always say that film school is great because you can make contacts. But I get the sense with you make friends wherever you go.
Yeah, making contacts, I think, along the way I've learned is a big part of this business. They say it's not about what you know, it's who you know. But I think it's about who you get to know, And so over the years, I've just been able to meet different people, and along the way, that leads you to, the next door.
Do you think it's easier in San Diego because maybe people's guard is down a little more than if you were in LA proper, where everyone's kind of like, ooh, what's this person trying to sell me?
I feel like maybe there's less competition, but there was also not that much support or community as far as the film world. And maybe I just wasn't a part of it at that time in my life. But yeah.
Do you regret not going to film school?
I don't regret not going to film school because I've moved on and moved past it. And by not going to film school, it's given me the time to learn on my own. And, you don't have to, you're not forced by a structure or a grade or those deadlines in that sense. But just by being able to freelance and learn along the way, it's given me some time, and it's definitely taken, quite a while of time, many years of time learning. But I also think it's helped as far as, be able to hone in on certain things or, figure out what I do best at. So,
right. And we're going to talk about the drone filmmaking and all that in a little bit. What advantages do you think you have as a self-taught filmmaker?
The advantages I think I have as a self-taught filmmaker is being a video editor. That was kind of what I learned along the way is anything that comes out, the editing has to be on point. So it's helped me be a better director, better writer on my own short projects. So being a video editor, I feel like is a real key to kind of being a filmmaker. You know, you have to know as a director, whatever shot you set up or whatever the story is, that it's going to come down to the editing. And is what you're shooting worth it? Is it going to end up on the cutting room floor? So, and not be utilized, you know?
What would you say to someone that says you have to go to film school to be a filmmaker?
Yeah, I don't believe you have to go to film school to be a filmmaker, especially these days. You know, everybody has, most people have a phone in their pocket, which you can start right there with, making a short film. And now, with the different things people post online, shorts or reels, there's various ways to learn how to tell a story, whether it's a short film or, a longer piece. So I don't think that you have to go to film school. You can learn these different things along the way.
What does being an independent filmmaker mean to you?
To me, being an independent filmmaker means you kind of don't have a boss. You're doing it on your own. But it's also a double-edged sword because that means you have to make your own deadlines. You have to obtain and reach for your own goals and get these things done, whatever it is. So if you're going to be making a film, you need to figure out, what do I got to do to get to that point? So.
Well, I mean, if you have a client, that's kind of your boss.
Right, yeah.
So, yeah.
And that's something, I deal with as well. Each project, no matter what it is, a commercial, doing some real estate photography or videography, it's kind of like your boss for that time, and you just have to reach to meet their goals or their vision and what they're looking for in the project.
Looking at your credits for Concussed, The American Dream, which we can go more into detail later, but in terms of your credits for the film, you are associate producer, director of photography, editing by, sound recordist, aerial videographer. Why do so much?
Because this project or this film started with me and writer-director David Kano. So it was just the two of us as we began making this documentary. So we were, kind of like how they say, the guerrilla filmmaking aspect. You take what you have and you start on this journey as making a film, or in this case, a documentary. So yeah, I was the sound guy. We had the drone. I was the drone guy, and yeah.
How many different places did you fly to do interviews?
I believe we went to 33 states.
Oh, that many? Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
To do interviews for this documentary. So we it took a bit of time and a couple of years doing so, but it was definitely a lot of traveling and a lot of determination to get it done.
Right, and you started in 2016?
We started, I believe, mid of 2016. Finally knew we were going to be making this documentary. I believe it was November of 2016, and have just continuously been doing that since.
What is it inside you that makes you have to constantly work on one of these film projects or video projects? I know you've made graduation videos or in memorial videos for people. It sounds like it's something that's very important to you. Right,
yeah. I think it's just a constant struggle of wanting to create, and at the same time, it's not, maybe it's luck, over the years, consistently working where you might get a call where somebody has passed away, and for example, by creating in memoriam videos, somebody might give me a call, and that is something I'm editing on for the week or two that I have, because if somebody has passed, it's a real tight deadline. So that's different than some other projects where, you might be able to plan out ahead of time, when you can shoot and whatnot.
Or music videos, things like that.
Yeah, music videos too. Yeah, that's definitely something you can plan on as far as location and things like that. So.
Right. But why do it? What is it that's interest? Why sit behind a editing?
Yeah.
Back hurts. You're there
It's
doing
just,
cuts and
yeah, it's just all I know. It's what I've been doing since, 8th grade going into high school. So it's just been a continuous journey, creating thing after thing, whatever it is, commercial, music video, documentary. So I think it's just a continuous, grind and just wanting to do it. There's nothing in me that wants to stop doing what I do because I love what I do.
But you said there was a time when people were supportive, but now maybe they see like, oh wow, this is more than just a pat on the back and good job, right? They're seeing that.
Yeah. Well, I think with family, definitely, I've created things that are touching, and then they've also seen how I've been able to do the same for other people as well. So I've been able to meet other people's goals or needs, such as when somebody passes away and I make a in memoriam video that really brings together a large amount of people and a small amount of people, but for a funeral, 150 people, it can be real difficult to put somebody's life in a 10-minute video. And I think it's something that I have a talent, I guess, at doing.
I think you've said that being a full-time video creator is not as fun as it seems.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Being a full-time video creator is not as fun as it seems because sometimes necessarily the money isn't always there, or the budget for who's hiring you isn't necessarily what you would like. It's kind of like a bidding war. They might reach out to you and say, "Oh, we got another guy who can do it for this." You know what I mean? So.
I'll just get an intern, sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's definitely fun. I mean, people just see the final product and think, that was good, or they're able to put in their critiques after the fact. But, as far as, writing an idea or shooting an idea, editing an idea, it all takes time. And editing is definitely a big factor in any filmmaking process or video production process that most people are not aware of how time consuming it can be. So, but I still enjoy it. That's why I continue on creating.
And you save a lot of money by doing it yourself too?
Yeah, definitely save a lot of money. And, being able to have the knowledge of, how to shoot something and how to edit something. And it also saves time because you don't have to overlook, somebody else and tell them, no, edit it this way. So yeah.
And you're crafting the story right there. So.
Right, yeah.
Can you list the number of ways you make money as a filmmaker?
Yeah, there's different ways you can make money as a filmmaker. I like to speak about it in video production terms. Because the term filmmaker, a lot of people think, a movie, which is definitely, a lot of the goal for a lot of people. But along the way, you may have to create commercials. You may have to create music videos. So technically, they're not, a movie or a film. But it's that same idea upon the way. So some of the ways you can earn money as a filmmaker is just being a part of either a team, whether it's a PA or, a sound person or video editor. It just depends what your role is. But for me, doing it independently, I found that, through real estate is a good way to, make money because people are always selling their homes, always looking for photography, videography. And so that's one way. In the creative field, music, people are always creating music, whether it's, hip hop, a pop artist. They always need a music video. A lot of times now these days, people are doing the vlogs. So they might need a behind the scenes type vlog for them, where you follow somebody around, which is something I've done before too in the past.
And then you've also gone to MMA fights,
Yes.
Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah, we covered MMA fights, the different organizations along the way. There's a few different ones. And you go there and you interview the fighters, either pre or post interviews. So pre-fight, get their voice, their point of view on how they think the fight's going to go, and get their interview afterwards, which sometimes it doesn't always go their way. So those interviews could be a little bit more somber, depressing, or they may win, and those ones are they're really pumped. We were there for Fight Week for Nate Diaz and Conor McGregor, and that was a big fight. And so the fans were just really vocal. So we were in front of the stadium there doing some interviews, and the fans started grabbing the microphone, and just the energy there was just really, really up. So yeah.
That's what I was curious is, are there any sort of like unwritten rules when you're going in knowing that things could get heated, or they could, the excitement, people with men go mad in crowds or whatever. So
right.
What women do too. It's just a men thing. But any sort of protocol that you do to?
Well, mainly if you're, in the arena, you need a press pass. But as far as outside, you have to do the groundwork as far as, meeting these athletes or getting a manager's number in order to get that interview. So there's kind of not necessarily any rules in that sense. It's just about making those connections and setting up the time frame, because a lot of the time these fighters are in a fight camp, and their schedule's really, strict. They don't have any time for any extracurricular things, but during fight week, that is something some of them will take the time to do, and something we've been fortunate to be able to do over the years.
Do you have any rules on if a fan is continually in the shot and won't get out of the way, or inebriated or whatever?
We've had some really energetic fans, but in that event, that moment, like I was saying with Conor McGregor, Nate Diaz fight, the first one, the fans were just really, they were just energetic, And so we were even interviewing fans, because there's just so many out there, and they were just so vocal about their love for Conor McGregor at that time. And, we just kind of let them do what they do. And, later on we figured out if we're going to use this clip or not. But yeah, it's entertaining.
I bet. Yeah, I bet that's never a dull moment.
Yeah.
You never know what you're walking into.
Right.
Why do you prefer documentaries over everything else?
What I like about documentaries is it's real, and it's always happening. Things are always happening. So as long as the camera's running, there's going to be footage later on to overlook and figure out how to tell this story. So another thing about documentaries is it can go, various ways. It can be a happy event, it can be a sad event, and you're just there to capture it and tell it truthfully.
Yeah, and you still have to have a 3-act structure in some way. So do you think about that while you're getting footage, or no, you're just allowing events to unfold?
You definitely think about how is this going to play out, in the big picture. You do let things unfold, but like as far as, say, if you're doing an interview for a documentary, that's something that's kind of maybe planned out as far as the questions that you may ask, and you get a sense of what story you're telling, which can change the type of questions you may ask. And sometimes you don't know, you're figuring it out, either on the spot, and those things just play out for you, and then you kind of learn what a film or documentary could be about.
And without saying any names, have you had any scheduled interviews where you go to meet the person and they don't want to talk, or they're combative, or, it happens to the best of us.
Yeah.
So, and you're like, okay, and you've got them mic'd up and...
Right, yeah. There was definitely one interview, I will not say the person's name. They were not combative at all, but we drove all the way out there to get the interview, and, he refused. He said, he changed his mind, not at this time. So, we made our peace with it. And strangely enough, years later, we're eating at having some lunch, preparing for another interview, and we see the same person right next to us, and he actually, says hello. It was just kind of interesting how we, came full circle and happened to just be sitting right next to each other.
Wow.
So,
That's really interesting.
yeah.
Well, it's good you were able to work it out. I mean, there's
Yeah.
nothing worse than, someone not being happy with
Yeah.
what their interview.
And it's up to them, they don't want to be on camera. We're totally fine with that.
Right.
So,
You also do stringer journalism for, different news things, accidents, things like that. Almost like Jake Gyllenhaal in Nightcrawler.
right. Yeah, it's definitely an interesting line of work. Can be very personal, especially if it involves people that are injured. So it can be a difficult situation when you approach a scene. But it is something that I've done over the years, whether it's fire or car accident or weather related, where something may get damaged or have damaged property.
How did you get into that?
Again, it's just being a filmmaker and always wanting to, shoot something. I think what really got me into that was back in 2004, where I lived in Poway, California. There was a wildfire that broke out. And so I was young at the time, and I just picked up my camera and just started, filming the fires around the neighborhood. They actually came pretty close to where we lived, and my dad and brother and some neighbors went out to, with water hoses and extensions to try to, put out the fire, or at least where it was heading towards the homes. But that week was definitely, something the city had not experienced before. And so I just found myself afterwards with, material of different places that had burned around us. And I ended up putting together like a short, 5 or 6 minute video. I guess that looking back, it can be somewhat like a mini documentary, or maybe kind of like a news piece. But we showed it to the local neighbors, and different people from around town watched it as well, and it kind of just got a little bit of notoriety or attention, I guess, just based off the subject. So.
And then when you've gone to other, natural disasters, whatever, do you have to have a press badge, or can you be an unofficial?
I do walk around with like a vest and then a press badge, and then I have a different credential as far as my drone work. But so I do wear the vest. It's helpful for safety situations, as far as like, especially if it's nighttime. You want to be seen by other cars. You don't want to get hit by a car. So you do definitely put yourself in a situation where there may be more harm than not being involved or not being on site as a videographer or photographer.
And do you communicate with first responders and let them know, or they already see what you're doing? And
It's kind of like a balance. So I have communicated, especially kind of if I may have questions. A lot of times they don't want to or cannot speak on what's happening, basically because it's still under investigation. And they let you know too, boundary-wise, like how far you can go. And I try not necessarily to push those boundaries. Definitely being respectful is the way I go about it.
Sure, absolutely. And then once you have that footage, do you go to the news? How does this work?
Yeah, I've reached out to different news stations, and it just depends on if they're interested in the story. There's so much that goes on these days, especially with social media. Everybody has a camera, so I guess it can kind of be competitive. So it is helpful to be on site or have the shot, as they say, the money shot. So it just depends on the subject and if they're interested or not in picking it up. I've dealt with local newspapers and things like that, where they'll definitely be interested in it because it's something local. So it's something that they would want to share.
So you've done a lot in the San Diego area?
Yeah, from San Diego, kind of up to Riverside County.
Okay.
Yeah, because I've done a bit of moving over the years.
Sure, sure. Okay. Did you see Nightcrawler?
I did. Yeah, it was good.
It's
Definitely
good, yeah. Yeah, I mean, in terms of what the news wants, do you kind of get a sense of what most, news channels would need?
Yeah, and I think from a filmmaker's perspective, you kind of have to have an eye as far as, or maybe a videographer perspective, as far as framing the shot, and what it matters basically what's in the frame, like a film, So it just depends on, you get a sense of what's going to be used and what's not, and a lot of times you have to prepare kind of like a short reel in a sense to submit it to these news organizations to see whether or not it's something they want to, show.
And then they license the right? I mean, have you ever had anyone take the footage or say, no, we're not going to use it, and then it turns out they used it?
I haven't necessarily had that. I mean, I've had it where, early on where I wasn't receiving any money. I was supposed to receive a name credit and they didn't put my name on it.
Oh.
But, which was like a little bit like, I finally got it on there and they didn't put my name. But, you get over it and move on.
Sure, but yeah, that's kind of a bummer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you took time to go there and risk
Right.
your safety. And
Yeah.
How do you find out about some of these events that you're filming for, as a stringer journalist?
For myself, just locally, there's, different Facebook groups that may mention something, or just by being, out at the right time somewhere where something's going on, like a wildfire, for example. It's really, you can see the smoke from miles away. So it might be like, what's that? I've been in another situation where, I seen the police throwing out the, what's it called, where they try to fly.
Oh, the flares?
No, where they try to give them a flat tire. They throw out the.
Because they're trying to stop a suspect?
Yeah.
Right. There's like something they put out. Right.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So I've been on site where, the police, try to stop a suspect and then they go and chase them and, see a helicopter. So I had the camera and just, you just kind of follow the situation. Don't get involved in the situation.
Right.
But, just see where it leads to. And that's one way.
And you say Facebook groups, what is like the topic, just,
Just
true
about the
crime
city.
Oh, I see.
Yeah,
Okay.
like city-wise, a Facebook group might say, hey, what's going on this street, or, what's going on in this part of the town. And so it just kind of gives you like a local tip of what's going on. I don't use all the scanners and things like that. I have used them. There's like an app you can use where, once a situation's going on, to kind of see where it's going, if that makes sense.
Sure, like the Citizens app or something like that.
Yeah, I think it's called Broadcast or
okay.
Broadcastify, something like that.
Interesting. Have you ever had, and you don't have to tell me which municipality or city, but them not want you to post something because it makes the city look bad?
I've never had where a city doesn't want me to post something, but I have found out, I guess you kind of do your own investigation as you're on site, for these stringer type of videos, where it may involve a minor. So, you may not want to show their face or things like that. It kind of goes along, I believe, also with being respectful. But, sometimes when it involves crime, the person may not be respectful to the public as well, and it is in the public, so it's a bit of a balance as far as what you decide to show.
Right. What's your adrenaline level, and what's your fear gauge when you're doing this?
Yeah, I've never been fearful, but definitely the adrenaline is definitely there, especially when something is happening and unfolding live in front of you. You feel like, it's like kind of the documentary aspect where you're capturing something live and, maybe others aren't seeing this yet and you just happen to be privileged and in the right place at the right time, if you could call it that. And you're seeing these events play out in front of your eyes. So But you have to also, maintain and deal with this adrenaline and stay calm, in order to get the shot. You might not have a tripod, so, you don't want shaky footage. There's the whole filmmaking aspect that goes into it as far as what you're capturing.
And there's a lot of stress that obviously goes along with being a first responder. You're probably experiencing some similar stress, maybe not as much because you're not responsible for helping the situation, but how do you deal with that afterwards if you've seen something that's very upsetting?
Yeah. After seeing something very upsetting, you kind of have to give yourself some downtime or maybe step away from the situation. Just think entirely about something else. Maybe don't directly go, to that footage and edit it together. Give yourself some time to figure out, what just happened? What did I just see?
If you were interested in storytelling, you may also like our new book, Story Questions, the sponsor of today's video. It's a story tool that offers you over 1,500 story questions that you can use as story prompts. It's packed with over 40 categories, so whether you are in the brainstorming stages, developing characters, dialogue, or rewriting, it can help you at every stage of the writing process. Think about this statement. Most powerful stories are just great answers to strong questions. We've linked up to story questions in the information section below. Now back to the interview. How important is it having NFL players in your film when trying to sell it?
It's definitely important, especially some of the ones that we have in the film. Brett Favre, Christian Okoye, Jim McMahon. These are all, like legends of the game. So to have them come out and share their story, it's important for the new generation, currently playing, and even up and coming players that, maybe that's their dream to be in the NFL. So for them to share their experience, it's real important to have them, and we're grateful to have them in the film.
Did you and your team sit down and think, who is this movie for?
Well, yeah. This movie is for a lot of people. It's for the athlete who wants to play the game. It's for the parents, of the athlete, because in this story, you hear the parental side of this and how it can affect the immediate family. So it's definitely for, I would say the everyday, everyday football fan who watches it. You kind of can't escape football season when it's on. It's on Monday Night Football. It's on Thursdays. It's on Sundays. You know what I mean? So it's definitely a part of, the American way.
How did Concussed the American Dream begin?
This journey began in 2016 when my partner on the film, David Kano, writer-director, was working on this as part of his thesis for his master.
Did you get involved together, or he had the idea for his master's?
He had the idea for his master's, and we were covering MMA and the sport of boxing at the time, so it kind of went hand in hand, covering the head trauma in these different sports. So it just basically turned into what the documentary is now.
Okay, so he's doing this research for his thesis, and at what point does he say, hey, this is a movie right here?
Yes, well, we came upon the story of Tyler Sash, who the film is about, and his passing, and we decided to tell the story of him, and we were able to meet his family, and they were able to, help us in telling Tyler's story.
Okay, and how long had you been planning the idea before you actually contacted Tyler's family?
Well, we had been interviewing different athletes, talking about head trauma and things that they go through, and everything from preparation, as far as training, and the head trauma that they may take, and discussing possible concussions or big hits that they may have had. And so just as time went on, it had led us to creating this documentary. But we knew pretty much early on, after a few months, that this is the story that we want to tell.
And how did you reach out to Tyler's family?
We were able to get his mother's number. I don't necessarily know how we got that. I think we interviewed a former player who played with him, Spencer Pasinger. He was on the team with Tyler. They both went to the Super Bowl that same year together. So actually we had an interview with him, and I think that may have led to how we contacted Tyler's mother.
And so was that the first set of interviews that you did? You flew to Iowa?
It was definitely part of the journey. We planned out our trip when creating this film. We went to various states, interviewed different athletes, and yes, we found our way in Iowa, where we were able to interview his mother, his sister, and his girlfriend that he had before he passed.
And you also were able to go around the town, which I thought was really,
Yes.
It gave a great image of what life was like there.
Yeah, it was definitely a small town, and everybody knew who Tyler was. So it was really, it's a real tight community, and especially with playing sports and his background. He was very well known. He broke and still held or holds a lot of school records. So everybody knew who Tyler was there. So when he had passed, it was heartbreaking.
How did Brett Favre come onto the film?
Brett Favre joined us in helping tell Tyler's story. We actually got to interview him multiple times, and it was through that we were able to. He wanted to come on board. He in the past been very verbal about concussions, and so we learned as well his story in meeting him at these different times, and yeah.
How far into the film before you had the initial interview with Brett?
I think it definitely maybe was a couple years, because at first we kind of had a slow start as far as planning the trips out to interview the people across the country. But once he was on board, it was all go from there.
And so I'm sure you found that once this person with a name said yes, then that person, then it made it easier? Oh,
definitely, yeah. And we learned that or discovered that throughout the whole process of this film. You tell somebody about, who's in the film, and then they say, okay, yeah, I'll do the interview. And then it just adds to the list of, people who may want to be a part or share their time with us in order for us to interview them. There's a whole handful of athletes that we were able to interview, and family members of the athletes that actually didn't make the cut, just because it's definitely difficult to tell so many stories, in a small amount of time.
So it centers around Tyler's story?
Yes, centers around Tyler's story as well as Brett Favre as well.
And so 2017 is when you started with the actual interviews, or no, you did some in this?
I believe it was late 2016, and we just carried on into 2017. It's probably when we really ramped up.
And was there a point where you said, we don't know how long this will take?
Definitely, there was definitely many points where we're like, okay, we're done. But then, new stories would break. For instance, in 2018, when Ann McKee's study came out, there was 110 out of 111 NFL players' brains that they cut open had CTE. So that was a big study, and that's what led us up to Boston to interview her. She was on Time's Most 100 Influential People of 2018. She was able to cut open a brain in front of us.
Oh, wow.
And so currently that's the method of discovering if an athlete has CTE or not. You have to physically cut open the brain in order to see this tau protein, which is basically around blood vessels, and they can just determine how bad of a case somebody may have.
So it's only once someone has passed that they're able to determine?
Right, yeah, there's no biomarkers currently. They have some potential ones, but currently there's no biomarkers, so they can't tell if somebody has it when they're alive. I believe they can kind of speculate by some of the scans they can do. A PET scan was very telling, but when doing a PET scan, I believe you have to have the nuclear dye in you and have some radiation. So that's one factor, but other than that, yeah, you can't tell. It's until you're post-mortem, they say.
Wow. And these were all people that, had passed it. Did they know
Yeah.
why?
And that was definitely a serious thing, when going and interviewing these people's families, or even athletes that are still alive, that can be a touchy subject, because it's either something, that has passed and somebody has, is no longer alive, or maybe current issues that somebody's still dealing with in their life, and how vulnerable or open they're going to be to sharing their story.
Right. I don't want to give too much away about the film, but you definitely got some very intimate moments, and you definitely saw how much they cared for the people that they lost.
Right, yeah. We interviewed Super Bowl champ Jim McMahon, who's also in the film. He talks about, there's a big slam that he dealt with, and big concussion, and he says, back then you just went back in the game. That's what you did. So there's kind of like a tough, macho, I guess, mentality that comes with the sport of football that I guess is a constant battle that these athletes are dealing with, because, they want to stay in the game. They want to keep their job. So they don't want to go out, and lose their spot, because they fought so hard, growing up, possibly playing youth football through high school, and finally getting on a main team is, would be a big part of anybody's life.
Sure. And I'm not sure if it was in the film where Brett said this, that some people can withstand a certain impact and others, it's smaller of an impact, but it affects them more.
Yeah, so that's a big thing about CTE, is everybody thinks it's about the concussions, but it can be about the subconcussive blows. So just the small hits themselves add up. And over time, the more damage you take, you may be worse off than others. It just depends on the person, I guess. But it is a neurodegenerative disease, so it constantly gets worse, and over time will get worse. So for many young athletes, they may not see any changes or drastic changes, but years later, they may, experience these changes and realize, why am I feeling like this? We interviewed Christian Okoye. He was from the Kansas City Chiefs. So he goes into his story about, some of the changes that he has felt after his career.
Can you tell us what is CTE?
CTE is chronic traumatic encephalopathy. So it's something that they have discovered after the fact, where athletes pass away. That's the way that they determine if you have CTE. There are these tau proteins that are, I guess everybody's brain has tau proteins, but they're finding them in other places, that they should not be. And more athletes have them than others. It just depends on how much damage they may have had. And definitely the time that they've played their sport can attribute to how much CTE or how, worse off they are having this disease. So it can be similar to Alzheimer's due to the fact of some of the findings that they find within the brain. So there's kind of a correlation there in a sense. Yeah.
So it mimics symptoms of dementia? Like, what are some of the, I know you said you can't tell until the person has passed away if
Right.
they had it.
Yeah, they're not exactly the same. But there was I believe it was ApoE4. It's a type of, I think it's a they were looking at it as a biomarker to determine if somebody has CTE. So kind of the Alzheimer's aspects of it is, people are very forgetful, or they might find themselves in a place, say they went to go pick up a family member at an airport. They might find themselves at the airport and totally forget why are they there? Why am I here again? So there's definitely forgetful moments that some of these athletes experience, and it just it's kind of unspoken and unheard about, because we glorify these athletes. You see them on TV and just think that they're unstoppable, but in reality they're a human being too, and they're dealing with these issues behind the scenes that the everyday viewer of the game doesn't get to see.
When you reached out to Brett initially for a first interview, what was his response to you?
He was open to it. We were definitely kind of, as we are with meeting any of these athletes, are a little bit nervous meeting them, but he was very open and gracious with his time that we had with him. I believe the first time we met him, he was doing a signing. So he did have a small window that we had with him. And then the second time we were able to interview him, we were able to go to his house, and that's what you see in the film. We were able to follow him around. He would tell different stories about his past and, coming into the league, and basically from there on just, told us some of the issues that he deals with as a athlete.
Yeah, that was a great part of the film. I don't want to give too much away, but I enjoyed watching that. This might be, I don't know how correct this is from online research, but from small research, we saw that Brett Favre plays for, 20 plus years, and he had maybe 50 concussions per year?
Right. So, he went back, and even with us, mentioned, playing through high school and college and into the NFL. So, he basically came up with, he could have had up to 1,000 concussions in his football career.
In the film, Brett kind of says, I don't want to know if I have it, because it's going to be on my mind. And I thought that was, that's really interesting. I hadn't really thought about that, about any disease in some sense.
Right, yeah. I think the mentality is that they don't want to know if they have it because there's not technically anything they can do after the fact. I believe there are things that they're experimenting with, like cold plunges and things like that, as far as improving. But they just don't want to know because, they're currently living their life, and, if there's nothing they can do about it, they're better off not knowing that they have the disease. That's some of the athletes' point of view as far as them not wanting to know.
Oh, wow. So cold plunges are possibly something that would...
Yeah, I think that, and there was, I know there's cryotherapy, and there's different types of things that may help in that. I think another issue is some people have the cerebral spinal fluid that I guess goes up into their brain, that they say. So it's all kind of, being discovered and figured out, trying to figure out what they can do.
Of the athletes that you reached out to, were many of them like, yes, I really want to talk about this, or did some that maybe didn't make the movie were hesitant?
Some people were definitely hesitant, but they were open to sharing their experience. And between the different athletes, a lot of them had the same similar traits, whether it's forgetfulness, depression, things like that.
Right. Yeah, I was looking up some of the symptoms that, mood changes, different things.
Right. Yeah, and there's been cases where people have been violent, to their own family or spouse. Public ones that have made the news. It's just something to look at. How does somebody who played this sport, what changed them, to become that kind of person that they weren't that person before.
Sure. Did you see from some of the research that you did in any of the athletes' stories that did have different things happen, whether it was very tragic or not, that it was kind of a spiraling down, maybe something bad happened and it set off a chain reaction?
I believe so. I mean, because it is a neurodegenerative disease, so it can get worse over time. So I think it just, attributes to their lifestyle, especially after the game. If they're no longer a star player or no longer on the team, not only from the public, but possibly, their family, they may not be seen as the same, because they're no longer in the spotlight. Not saying that happens with all athletes, but that can be something that they go through. And then on top of that, they're dealing with this personal issue that they have that they don't know, why am I feeling a certain way? Why am I forgetting things? Why can't I, keep my attention, on point where I need to get certain things done? They're trying to find the answers, and their family as well, doesn't have the answers for them. So.
What are some of the best moments you had making the movie?
There's been many moments that, were great moments. We got to go to different Super Bowl events and meet some of these athletes when making this film. That's definitely a highlight. But a lot of these people that we're reaching out to, may be dealing with this head trauma issue. So it wasn't always, happy moments, especially when they're dealing with their own battles or struggles.
Yeah, I would imagine that would be difficult because you're getting these stories and you're the movie's coming together, but at the same time, there's a sadness behind what the story's about. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. There was a football player, Gary Kutzinger. He played for the Oilers back in the late '60s, I believe. And he's somebody who you could tell physically, the way he walked. He would be repetitive with some of his stories. And he was being vocal about, the head trauma and that these older athletes had dealt with, many years ago. And they kind of felt forgotten as the sport continues to grow. So it was that was a sad moment as far as, getting to meet an athlete that maybe, the current generation may not know him by name.
What was your emotional state with working on this film for so long? Both the two of you and David.
Yeah. Well, it definitely takes a drive to, work on something so big as far as this documentary goes. So, we definitely had to have the energy to, get up and go and interview these people. Sometimes we interviewed multiple people within the same day, with drives in between, traveling and whatnot. But definitely by the end of the day, you're, run down, and you've heard so many stories that are definitely touching. And so it just opens your eyes to, the other lifestyles that some of these athletes have, despite what you see on TV.
And how would you know you got the footage that you needed when, let's suppose you had a flight the next morning and wanted to make sure?
Right, yeah. Over time, we had kind of had, I would say, a pretty big list of questions as far as that we would ask some of these players. And that's kind of how we knew. They would give us a response, and, they were very vocal. A lot of these athletes they have a personality, a big personality, So it wasn't too hard as far as interacting with them and hearing these stories. And especially if they were going through something, it took a lot for them to open up, but once they did, it was very telling.
And then just from a filmmaking standpoint, you would then go back to the hotel and make sure you got all the footage that you need, or do it right there on the spot?
Oh, definitely, yeah. Sometimes we did some traveling in the car as well. So, we'd have a laptop, we have multiple hard drives, make sure that there's, 2 copies of the same day's footage, make sure it's on the second drive before, clearing it from the memory card. There was a lot technically as far as from the filmmaking aspect to make sure, this is somebody telling you about their life. And so you want to treat the footage with care. You don't want to accidentally delete it. Some locations, where maybe in a snowy area, you don't want to drop it. It just a lot of handling of the equipment that, you just have to, treat the footage with care.
If you had a chance to meet Tyler Sash, what would you say to him?
I guess I would ask him, would he want to continue playing, knowing the result that he had? Many players would want to, especially to achieve a goal. In his case, he was able to go to the Super Bowl. I believe it was his rookie year. So that's a dream, that many of these players, hope for in their career, but may never attain, But he did have some physical issues. He had a shoulder injury that he wanted to have surgery on. And so I just, would like to know, would he want to continue, or, could he maybe pivot into something else and, maybe even help other players possibly, I don't know, after the fact, if he had the knowledge of how this was going to all play out. I guess we would all, in hindsight, it's different.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's not just to the notoriety, but it also can be a ticket out of poverty for some players,
Right.
Drastically change not only their lives, but their families' lives.
Right. Yeah, and we, in the film, we show he actually originally grew up playing basketball. So he thought his whole life he was going to be a basketball player. So he transitioned at one point into football, which I played football as well, youth sports growing up. And I've had a concussion as well. So, it's something that many players are, football players from young to professional are not going to make it to the professional level, So it's just, I guess, questionable whether or not somebody wants, should play or not tackle football.
Right. Is that something that helped drive you through the film, is that you had experienced a concussion yourself?
Yeah, I would say so, because I played for many years. I think it may be like 6 years. I only played 1 year of high school, but I definitely seen the change as far as, athletes in size growing up from when I played Pop Warner to high school. But, football was a sport, or is a sport that I love, I played for so long. So there's an old clip of me being interviewed.
That's
where
great.
Somebody's asking me, what do I like about the game? And I say hitting people, tackling them. And then they ask me, what kind of sounds do you hear on there? And I would say helmet smashing. So looking back, it's kind of, ironic that even as a young kid, somehow I was glorifying it, because, that's what football was, get the big hit, get the big tackle, and score a touchdown, win the game, So it's part of the game. It's a contact sport. But from a young age, it's just something that, I was taught or brought into, and yeah.
Right, so then that would make sense. You would stay with something not just to have an amazing film out, but also there was a personal element for you in it.
Right,
They helped carry it.
Yeah, and getting to meet, different athletes along the way has been, it's, you don't get to meet, a famous athlete or something every day. So getting to make a film about them and really getting to know some of these people and tell their story was a good experience.
Sure, and you're seeing the human side of them, which we only see the superhero side.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. It takes you on a different a ride, in a sense that you're seeing the highs of people's careers, and we can all want to sort of live vicariously through them, and then you don't see maybe the private pain, And I think one thing Brett Favre said just in passing was just after 50 no one cares or whatever. I'm like, oh, I'm sure they still care about you, but
right.
That's an interesting thought, because it's still relatively young. You don't think that, but yeah, that you feel like maybe your best days are behind you, and how difficult that would be. But I still think that's not so much the case for some of these people. But maybe that is.
In some sense, some of these athletes are retiring earlier nowadays. Some maybe for smarter reasons. Maybe they're becoming aware of these issues and figuring out how to make a career after the game. So that's, one way to look at it. Somebody like Brett, everybody loves him. They call him the gunslinger. They just love the way he played the game, and he just gave it his all.
Right, and I was listening to an interview that he did in maybe, I don't know, a year ago, and just in research for this, and he said he'd love to coach people that are younger, not maybe while they're about to be offered all this money and all the sort of accolades that go with it, but to get them before some of the limelight and all that sort of gets in the head.
Yeah, and I think he's spoken about the fundamentals, learning the fundamentals of the game, kind of before, playing tackle football. That's one thing that's kind of being considered, is maybe playing flag football up until potentially high school. Christian Okoye, who I believe he was originally a track athlete, didn't begin playing football until when he was in college, and his father, I guess, didn't want him to play. But he was just such a, like a freak athlete, and had basically the fundamentals to play the game, and was able to learn it, and found, he was on the Kansas City Chiefs.
After spending years on this film with David Kano, will you look at the game of football the same?
I definitely don't look at football the same, because pretty much on every play, there's some sort of impact. So whether it's the guys on the line going head to head, or whether it's the running back being tackled, or the receiver being hit after catching the ball. I mean, there's plenty of, incidences throughout the game where, you can see that contact, and it is a contact sport. So, but after, doing the research and being able to interview these different players, it's hard to look at the game the same. I guess, looking back to when I was younger, maybe, I don't know if I was a little bit naive to what was happening. I didn't know that these, these head trauma or, minor subconcussive blows could eventually lead up to something like CTE. So it's something, I guess, I don't look at the game the same. I guess from youth to high school to professional, it just seems like everybody's putting their body and their brain at risk for the sake of entertainment.
What does it mean to be a certified drone pilot?
To me, I wanted to be certified as a drone pilot, just because I knew going out for these different jobs that I would be questioned, even for jobs that, I'm meant to be there or hired to be there. I might have a manager of a store come out and ask me, what am I doing? So it just helped to be able to be certified. And plus you do have to be certified and able to obtain FAA clearance in certain spots where you can't just fly up a drone recreationally. You need to have the right certification.
Oh, and that's here in the States or California?
So it's probably, throughout, because FAA is, federal. So there are just certain areas that, I believe even around Disneyland, they have what they call a TFR. So there's a flight restriction around it. There's a certain radius that you're not even supposed to fly a drone around that area. So, but you can obtain, clearance to fly in some of these areas. It just takes a little bit more time. So I just wanted to be certified so I know what are the proper steps to take and how to figure out how to get through these obstacles. Because of course you don't want to have any incidences where you're up at the same level as an airplane. You don't want to cause any kind of collisions. There's some big responsibility that the average everyday drone user may not be aware of.
And is that something that would be common? Wouldn't the drones be lower than most of the flight paths?
Well, you can just, shoot the drone up into the sky and press the up arrow on the, on the remote control and, send it up as high as you want. But there is a height limit. So the height limit is generally 400 feet above ground level. And then, yes, these other planes generally fly higher than that. But
Okay.
for somebody recreationally, who's just doing it as a hobby or just for fun, they may not know these rules. And so it was getting my certification that I learned that.
So they not only do they have to see you operate it, but there's like there's a quiz or a test.
There's a test. Actually, they didn't need to see me operate it. But there are, I guess, issues with that. Like if you were to crash it, I believe it said there's damage over $500, then you'd have to report it to the FAA. But it was mainly just a questionnaire test. And I believe you have to get I'm not sure exactly, like at least 75% correct, something like that.
And do you have to have insurance as a drone
You
operator?
don't have to, but it's definitely important to get insurance. You can do it, there's apps where you can do it by the job. So if you think you're in a high risk area, you can get insurance. For example, a high risk area for me would be, like if you're in a downtown area and there's vehicles or people. In other areas, there might be power lines or trees or other obstacles. So you just have to be fully aware of your surroundings. That way, because you're kind of like panning in or, flying in to a scene, per se. And then, you might pan out and think you're on the same route, but you better remember that the power lines are there, because if you hit the power line, you might land on somebody walking by. They're just so many constant obstacles that are occurring when flying a drone.
And are there rules about flying over private property?
Yes, there's rules, because I've had some of these issues when doing residential jobs. Some people do not want, other neighbors may get upset that you're flying over their property when you're in fact hired to help sell, a property that's being sold, because obviously you have to be above their property in order to see the property next door. Sure. But generally, just as long as you're not being invasive, and definitely, like low where you're kind of in their fence line where they think, you're doing something sketchy. But generally, I've had a pretty good experience and no real issues.
What are some of the, ramifications of flying a drone without a license?
So what do you mean?
Have you heard about people getting their drones taken away from them, being fined, jail time?
I don't really have any experience or know of anybody who's experienced these issues. I'm just aware of what can happen. Obviously, I would say the more inexperienced drone pilots or flyers, or actually just recreational users, are probably going to be more irresponsible with it, as far as, flying, higher than the ground level that you're supposed to, or, even flying directly above people or flying through and around people, I think at the recreational level, it's kind of needs a little bit more guidance, or,
Sure. Maybe following the golden rule.
Yeah,
I've seen
it's like there's a little too much freedom, I think. Like, you can't just go and get a driver's license. There's some steps to it.
Sure.
So, and there are some steps to doing it, but a lot of people, they'll just buy a drone. You can buy them at Costco and go fly it up the same day, But there's definitely some things that go into it. You have to register it online. So there's just some responsibility to it that most people maybe are not thinking of when purchasing a drone.
And when you buy it from whatever store, do they have information that then they turn over?
A lot of the drones now, they have to have, I think it's some kind of RFID chip where they can transmit to other aircrafts where you are, and I think the FAA can basically see where you're at flying.
Oh, wow.
So, for example, though, like when I am flying near an airport, a lot of times I have to call in to let them know I'm going to be flying, and then tell them, which coordinates or which locations. Generally, they already have that because I've already submitted that through the FAA online. So it's just kind of like a verbal awareness, like, hey, I'm going to be here. And usually they just say, okay, give us a call after you're done flying.
Oh, so then they know that the area is cleared.
Right.
Interesting.
Yeah, because definitely when you're near an airport, especially a location I capture frequently, they're flying, low, because a lot of them are either landing or taking off. And in one spot particular, they're doing a lot of practice runs. So they're doing like touch and go is what they call them. So with a small aircraft, they're not landing, they're just touching and then going and then kind of doing laps. So that would be an example of one where I need to be aware how low they're flying and where I'm flying, and kind of keep within my radius.
Fascinating, interesting stuff. So even if you feel like you're within the guidelines, just also being sort of a good citizen and not being abusive with the drone. Sounds like a golden rule.
Yeah, and I definitely kind of feel like, I'm definitely comfortable, but it's always, your awareness has to be on point, I find that there's always constant obstacles when flying a drone. Obviously, for example, when you want to sell a house and you're capturing a house, you don't want to use the shot where the car's driving by. You just want the clear street, because then it puts into the mind of the buyer, is this a busy street? Are there cars on it? So sometimes, you're waiting for a car to pass by, you hit the record button, and what happens? Somebody on a bicycle walks by, and then they pass, and what happens? An airplane's coming, so you're thinking, okay, maybe I need to move, depending on where you're flying. So there's just so many obstacles that come your way, and then existing obstacles like trees, power lines, and things like that. So.
And for the real estate videography that you do, how many times does a homeowner want drone footage?
Generally, all the time. Business-wise, actually, I wanted to go into this just doing the drone work, but obviously, real estate agent or broker, they want the full package. So usually that includes interior and exterior, and then the exterior would include the drone work. And then it just depends on the agent, they may just want photos, or some may just want the video as well.
Right, because some neighborhoods are less than perfect, and so if you're flying over something that maybe there's a hazardous waste dump near it or something that could maybe deter buyers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of a balance. It's like documentary filmmaking. You want to be truthful as far as what you're showing, but in this sense, it's it's commercial. It's it's a business. They want to sell the house, so obviously they'll have to disclose it. But
sure.
It may not be the first thing they want to show. So it's kind of like a little bit of workaround. So that's why I say when there's obstacles, for example, if there was a homeless person walking by, it's just not the thing that you want to highlight within your video, because you're trying to bring out the best in the property. So there's just some things you learn to avoid, and in creating these highlight videos, it's just something I've learned over the years.
How many drones have you lost or crashed?
So I haven't really crashed that many times. I can probably count them on one hand. But there definitely have been times where I've actually crashed the drone into a palm tree. And that goes back to the awareness issue, but then it fell. And sometimes you can fix the propellers, maybe just the propeller broke, but I've had where the gimbal on the camera itself has broken. And so you can send it into the company if you have the right, if you're still with under the like insurance or whatever. So, but it's been pretty rare in my experience. And that's what I've learned early on, is you don't want to be reckless when flying a drone, because obviously it can be a hazard to others. So for me, it's just taking your time and learning, and it even helps personally, because a lot of people, they get a drone and they want to fly it as fast as they can, and especially when filming a shot, to me, there's like a cinematic aspect to it. It's not just like how fast you can go. You want the shot to be smooth. You don't want no abrupt movements. So I feel like there's an art to it.
What's the best way to handle people questioning whether you're licensed? I mean, maybe less so where you are, but here in LA, it seems like there's someone around every corner
Right.
looking to question what you're doing.
Yeah. And I've had that before at, like a commercial property where a manager will come out and tell me, you can't be here. And so a lot of the times I'll come prepared with, the broker's information maybe who contacted me for the job. I'll have the printout of the property. And then on top of that, I'll have my vest on, which I wear a vest. So cars and people are aware that, because, you do a lot of standing and walking around and following the drone. And so you want people to be kind of aware, of you and when you're in their space, because, in a parking lot, cars are backing out and coming in and out. It's constant. So within that vest too, I wear basically my badge or ID that I got from the FAA. And it just, if I need to pull it out to prove to them I'm a certified drone pilot, then I'll do so. But those are some of the things.
That's good because you'll definitely be challenged, and sometimes there's an art to deflecting an angry HOA person that wants to report you or something.
Yeah, and I feel like I can name like every type of obstacle. I've had, a woman tell me, if I had my gun, I would have shot that down.
Oh, so wonderful.
So I'm like, okay. So a lot of these times I'm like, I wish I had my GoPro running, so I can, capture these experiences that because I feel like it's kind of an interesting thing that people don't know. I guess with any job, things happen that people aren't aware of, but
sure,
I'm just trying to photograph a property. I'm not trying to be invasive or anything like that. I'm just, there to do a job.
Oh, sure. Yeah, but all sorts of things can happen when you pull out a camera. No. What's the best drone shot you've ever captured?
Best drone shot. I can't think of one per se, but definitely when you're in the downtown area, where there's buildings, it's lively. To me, it's fascinating, especially where I grew up in San Diego. My dad helped build a lot of those buildings. So to me, the history kind of is there, and it's just, but the business is always moving. Somebody selling this property 1 year and 10 years later, it's selling again. So I just kind of tie in the like the history of the city and then what's coming new. Sometimes it's an empty lot maybe, and they want to build a high-rise there. So they'll hire me to kind of film the surrounding area and give an idea of a possible investor who may want to come in and build there.
How did you become a real estate videographer?
So I've been into video production for a long time now. I would say since 2000, maybe 2005, kind of professionally. So it was just kind of a way of paying the bills, just another element of the video production side. And obviously drones being accessible and at your fingertips. It's not the shot that in the filmmaking world, you used to have to get a crane or get a jib or, to get these type of shots. So that was my initial interest. And then I just, found the world of real estate, which, there's constant business. People are constantly selling their house or looking to buy a house. And so it was just one method of using my creative, expression in a sense.
So you're primarily working with an agent that's working with the seller?
Yes.
The seller's agent?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Usually it's from the seller's perspective. Or sometimes, like I said, if they're going to have an investor come in. Okay. Because there might be plans for that property or, an idea of what they want to do with that property. So, sometimes it's not for sale. It might be for lease. So there's just, different things.
And have you ever done a foreclosure? Have you ever, or one that was a short sale that maybe it was a little bit of a heated situation? And
yeah, I would say definitely probably like a foreclosure. and as well properties that have been difficult to sell. So that's also my job to kind of, I guess, bring in my expertise and pull out what are the good aspects of this property. So visually, I guess you could say the art of droning, or, I try to bring my film background to that as far as the way you can story tell or show a property.
Ray, can you talk us through your editing process? What are your first steps?
So generally, let's just break it down to if it was a birthday party that I filmed, or a wedding or something. I'll say birthday party because it's a smaller event. You have to dump all the video footage onto the computer, organize it, put it into folders. You might have different cameras, so that's another way of organizing it. You have to bring it into your editing system. I use Final Cut. You can make different, they used to call them bins, but basically different folders within the editing system. Label them. Basically, I do it to match the folders that I have on the hard drive or the computer. And then basically you have to play and go through the footage. So if you filmed a 4-hour birthday party and you came home with 30 minutes, or you came home with 1 hour worth of footage, I watch all of the footage. I clip all of the good parts from the birthday party. Sometimes I put them all on one timeline just so I can see what I'm working with. And then sometimes I put it chronologically, usually, mostly. And then pretty much from there, it just depends on what kind of video it is. So if there's music, so then you're gonna figure out, okay, which clips am I using to add to this to make it interesting. If it's more raw, then you wanna show the key moments that happen. So like I said, if it was a birthday party, somebody might be blowing out the candles. If this was a bigger event like a wedding, then you want the whole ceremony, you want the kiss, you want the first dance, So for each project, I take that same editing workflow, and it just depends on the size and scope of the project that you're working on.
Okay. And do you always stick with that process?
Pretty much I always stick with that process because for me, I want to know what I'm working with. Obviously, if you're the shooter or the filmer, you're pretty aware of what happened. But there's a lot of times there's things that you might miss, something in the background, or possibly a distraction that you don't want to include. So it's only by going through that footage that you know what you're working with. And then, it just depends on how much footage you have. That could take a couple hours, that could take a night, that could take a couple days, depending on the size of the project. But then it gives you, a new outlook on what you have to work with as far as editing and creating what you want to make.
How is editing different now than, let's say, 10 years ago?
I would say editing is different now because, you can edit on your phone. There's apps dedicated to editing. You can throw captions on there. You can add effects on there. But I feel like I still stick with the, the older method. Especially if it's a more important subject, I want to take the time to sit at the computer and, look at all the footage and see what I have to work with. So in that sense, that stayed the same. But maybe what's gotten better is the technology, the computer, and just, I guess, the tools, the hardware. But other than that, I feel like my editing process has kind of stayed the same. Thinking back to years ago when I first started, me and a friend of mine would make like short, scary movies type things. This is like after the movie Scream came out and Blair Witch. So we would kind of recreate those. So, but we would, film it on 8mm tape and then put it to a VHS. You put the 8mm in like a VHS tape. You're able to transfer it to a different tape and kind of structure the way you wanted to edit. It was definitely a more difficult way of editing. And then, the digital aspect came along where then you could copy the tape to your computer, but then you had to physically play the tape and watch it in order to copy it to your computer. And nowadays, thankfully, with your iPhones or even cameras, you just stick the chip into your computer and drag the clips over, and they're saved. So in that sense, it saves time. But for me, I still have to watch the footage. So, but it is nice just to be able to drag the clips over and, I guess, begin the editing process.
How do you know a certain piece of footage is going to be in the edit no matter what?
For me, it's a shot. So if there's something within that shot that was very telling, again, going back to like a wedding, if it's the kiss or the cake cutting, well, obviously it's a highlight of the wedding, but like the point of weddings is, you have to get the shot. So it's like, that's a key thing. Like there's all those pivotal moments within a wedding. So it's like, for sure you can't miss the shot. So, but in any other project, I think it's a matter of what's in the shot. And then that can go back to, the sound. Did you capture the right sound? Is there, sometimes just everything has to line up to be the perfect choice to make the edit.
So for your movie, Concussed, The American Dream, were there certain shots that you knew most certainly were going to be in the movie?
Yes, definitely. We took a trip to the cemetery, and so the family got to visit there at the gravestone, the headstone, and we had a limited amount of time there with them, and so it was like, this is it, the moment's now. So aside from just regularly filming them, we had a drone as well. So it was that as well, capturing it with the drone too.
Right, yeah, that was effective, seeing the neighborhood from a bird's eye view.
Right, yeah. It helps to tell the story of the location and the town that Tyler grew up in, to give the viewer, the proper setting of, the lifestyle that he lived and the neighborhood he grew up in.
Right, very sort of structured and nice lawns and things like that,
Yeah.
and very much about football and a community.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, you got a sense of that. What do you do when a piece of footage is missing and you can't go back to get it? What are some creative storytelling things you can do with editing?
Yeah. So, there's different things, they call it either cutaways or B-roll shots. So if somebody's speaking, you can always do a cutaway to something else, or if they're speaking, cut to like a B-roll shot of them, something that they're speaking about. So if I'm speaking about a dog jumping over a fence, but I don't have the dog jumping over a fence, maybe I have a fence shot, or maybe I have a sky shot, something to work with. So as an editor, that's why I believe it's important to comb through all of the footage, so you're aware of what you're working with, because you never know when, there might be a good shot, but it has nothing to do with technically like the subject matter. But for instance, if you're missing a shot, maybe that piece of content is worth using now. So.
You mentioned off camera, I believe, that you've taken notes during interviews for your documentaries using your iPhone. Right. Can you talk about how you use these notes and these timestamps and why it's important? Yes.
So basically at the start of an interview, for example, we'll be recording on the sound device as well as recording on the camera. And so later on, those two will have to be edited together. So generally we try to time it pretty similar. So, 1 minute in on the video recording will match the 1 minute in on the sound recording. It just makes it easier later on when you're putting it together. But throughout the interview, I would be taking notes. So I'd write down, at the 5-minute mark, they said this. At the 10-minute mark, they said this. So whenever there was something important, I'd definitely give that part an asterisk. But I would definitely log throughout the whole conversation or whole interview, pretty much every question or every answer that was given. So later on within the editing, if you're looking for, where was that time that the athlete said they got a touchdown. Oh, it was at 25 minutes because I can reflect back to my notes, and it's easy to search on, a digital device. You can type in a keyword, touchdown, and boom, there it is. So for the documentary Concussed, the American Dream, when you're interviewing a handful of athletes, there's all these different interviews. You can jump to a particular interview and type in the keyword for, something you might want to be looking for within your edit. And that was why it was important for me to create notes for this. And that kind of saved me time too when bringing back the footage into the edit. I could kind of copy the notes and paste them into Final Cut to kind of give me an idea of what that scene was about or interview was about. But as I previously stated, that I still watch all of the footage. So an additional thing that I do, I'd make markers where the footage is when I'm playing the footage. So that just means making a mark, say, at the 1 minute mark of an interview, where just say the player said, I caught a touchdown. And on that marker, you could write, he caught a touchdown. So generally, I would reflect back to my notes and copy them into that mark. So it was already kind of pre-logged or pre-noted. So it was definitely helpful as far as getting through logging the footage to prepare to begin editing, because editing is a long process, many hours, many days, definitely depending on the size of the work you're editing.
And you prefer Final Cut Pro?
Yeah, well, actually, I started on Adobe Premiere many, many years ago. And then the thing was everyone was talking about Final Cut Pro. So I made the switch to that. And both of those systems I'm pretty familiar with. And I think once you get the hang as far as video editing, you can jump to any system and pretty much understand it. So those two have been, my go-to.
Have you tried Avid?
I have tried Avid, yeah. I had to do it back in college because I took some classes at Palomar College. I ended up getting a certificate there for digital video and digital media. But we had to take Avid as one of the classes, learn the system. And for me, it was nice. It was like, I guess, kind of like a step up from Final Cut. It just seemed a little bit more organized or structured. So.
Do you believe the cliche saying, fix it in post? Is that really true? Or?
I don't like that saying. We try to fix it in post, and we'll do what we can, but it definitely brings on more headaches than you would like. For example, in real estate, I was the filmer, and but they were limited on the amount of time that they had, so we had to rush to get the shots. But usually it takes a certain amount of time, and as well, if you're rushing to get the shots, maybe the shot doesn't come out steady, or for example. So in that example, you're coming home with rushed work, so you better have gotten the shot. And for that example, you can't go back to that house to get that material again. So sometimes there's only so much you can fix in post. But as an editor, I say I always fix it in post.
What are your thoughts on working with multiple editors? Do you enjoy collaborating?
Yeah.
Is it more difficult?
I think it can be helpful, especially when you're working on a larger project, because you have different set of eyes working on different parts, say, of the film. And so it just kind of helps get through the story. And so, but being on page with the other editors can be helpful. But in a sense, I believe also creatively, maybe you don't have to necessarily be on the same page, because sometimes people have their own editing style or way of telling a story. So it could be helpful in a sense, I think, creatively, as far as telling a story.
What are the first steps to making a documentary?
So when making a documentary, you obviously want to know your subject matter or story that you want to tell. So you may have to do some, I guess, investigating or research on what it's about. And this just depends on, how big of a documentary maybe that you're going to make. For example, in this documentary that I worked on, Concussed, the American Dream, we basically, I guess, felt like we went to school. We had to learn what's causing CTE, chronic traumatic encephalopathy. And, everybody thinks concussions. Well, it's not just the concussions, it's the subconcussive blows. Okay, and then what happens with CTE? There's tau proteins in the brain that end up in places that they're not supposed to be. And what happens when this happens? People become forgetful, violent, depressed. So it does these changes to somebody. So in that sense, when creating a documentary, we had to be aware of, the subject matter. And so when interviewing a player or an athlete, we had to know the type of questions to ask them, So it can start as simple as, how long have you played? Have you ever had any concussions? Do you remember any big hits that you can, notably bring up? And then, a lot of the times we ask the players, if you had to play again, would you? Or knowing what you know now, would you still play the game of football? And so it's just kind of like an education yourself as far as learning the subject matter of what's happening within the story. And sometimes the story's unfolding as you're going through it, right in front of your eyes.
How do you know if an idea can make a full documentary?
Well, I do think you can kind of make a documentary about anything. It just depends on, is it worth telling? And are people willing to learn and listen to what you want to say? Like any film has to have a voice or point of view. So I think you just have to discover what is the story that you want to tell. And in this story, it's about the damage that a sport can do to a person long term, and is the risk worth the reward?
That's excellent, because it also ties into, are you personally invested in the story? If it's something that you think is just going to sell, or will be at the top of whatever streaming charts,
right?
But if you're really your emotions are in it, your heart's in it.
Yeah, and I think you have to have some level of interest in the story. I believe this is different than other jobs where you just, show up and, you have to have some level of interest, and then you gain some level of care. And as you meet different people, you care for the individual in a sense, because they're giving you their time, for you to listen to them, and then after the fact, in editing, it's up to you to tell their story in the most honest way possible.
How many interviews does it take to make a documentary?
Well, I definitely think there's different point of views that can help tell a documentary. I would say probably at least 3. But it could be from one person's point of view. It just depends on how are you going to tell that story. Say if there was 2 people, one person might have one point of view and the second person has the other side of the story. Then also within a documentary, is there a narrator or voiceover that maybe is leading the documentary and you never see that person? And sometimes that occurs, I would say, within the writing, or maybe within the questions that are being asked to the person being interviewed, whether it's one person or 3 people.
How do you write your documentary scripts?
Well, I think for writing a documentary, you obviously want to structure kind of like a beginning, middle, and end. I would kind of start with the end, because you want to know where you're going. But I also think sometimes you don't know kind of where you're going, because new stories may come along. But for us in this documentary, we definitely had questions that we've seen early on between different individuals that we could ask. And so there were just similarities within them. So we had similar questions. So later on, we can show possibly either all of their point of views together, or maybe start on one point of view and use the tail end of the other athlete's answer to continue to tell the story. So, because sometimes it may be repetitive to use the same, say, question, for example, to have them repeat the same, each give their answer. It just depends on how powerful you're trying to make the scene. There's kind of an art to it, I guess, within the editing.
And was that something that happened often, where there were new things, new paths you took from different answers?
Well, definitely, because the science in this documentary, so like the science came out about the brain, the trauma, the study, and McKee's study from Boston. So that was one. And then, not to bring up the dark side, but then the Aaron Hernandez story came out as well. So that was another topic kind of to include. Just another story of another athlete dealing with this in a more extreme way. He had a different, lived a different life. They don't all live, everybody has their own life. Everybody's an individual, but how they may react and what environment they may be in can change the way that their life ends up. If they live, somewhere totally different, maybe that could change the way the outcome of their life ends up. But that's life anyways. But, having a disease such as CTE, throws another what's the saying? Another variable.
Another variable,
Yeah.
Okay, right. Where do you get your images and B-roll?
So images and B-roll, can be obtained possibly directly through a family member. They may have personal photos that they can share with you, which is helpful to really get to know the people or family that you're working with in this case, because not everybody's open to, possibly sharing maybe a younger baby photo of somebody who has passed. There might be more private photos that we don't have access to. So just by communicating and talking with the subjects that you're interviewing, you learn and you can find out they may have these photos that can attribute to telling the story.
Yeah, I thought it was powerful, the younger photos that you showed, and even just watching Tyler's mom, and then there's a picture behind her, and just brings you into that world.
Right, yeah. Yeah, and they were very open with telling Tyler's story, and very helpful, and they've been through a lot.
Yeah, it shows. What's the toughest part of working on a documentary?
The toughest part about working on a documentary is the time, a lot of patience, especially depending on the size of the documentary, how many people you may interview. Just means more hours of footage that you may have to sit through, especially in the editing process. So time-wise, it definitely takes time. And then there's obviously the different aspects of filmmaking, so pre-production and production, and then post-production, and then after that, getting it distributed. And so it just takes a long time as far as getting it to the people to see from day one to the end point.
Have you ever embarked on a project and said, I'm in over my head here? And turned out you weren't, but at first you were like, you know what, this is far too massive for me to do. I don't know why I love this topic.
Yeah. I would say we felt like that with this many times, but it was the stories of the other people that we're telling that just kept us going, kept that drive in order to finish and tell their story. So although personally you may feel in over your head, you just have to continue and work towards the initial goal that you started with.
And how is it to see that first rough cut?
It's helpful. I mean, because it gives you a sense of where you're going. And then it can also be, like, what are we doing? We have work to do, you know what I mean? So, but a rough cut is definitely, it's just part of the process to getting it done.
What final advice do you have for any filmmakers who are inspired by you and your projects and they want to make documentaries?
Mm-hmm. I would just say keep going, keep creating whatever you do. You know, if you're a videographer, keep shooting. Find somewhere that you can shoot. People are always looking for shooters. If you're an editor, there's always things to edit. I would just say keep going, and persistence is key. Year after year, you'll find your way. You'll find your, your art, maybe what you're best at. So just being consistent and I think is important.
Did someone give you specific advice when you saw someone, maybe when you were getting your certificate, when you were at Palomar?
I did have a professor at Palomar who had just passed away. And actually he was very open in, giving his advice without kind of kicking you down, you know what I mean? So it was very helpful in, it was real motivating to keep you going because you can see, okay, maybe I can do this different without making you feel like it's something that you can't do. Because sometimes you feel, like I can't edit that good as the other person, or I'm not a good shooter like this person, but with practice and time, it's something that can be improved on. And that's something that he showed me.
I like that, without kicking you down, because I know in watching, coaches talk to team members, there is a breaking down, and then
Right.
sort of a building back up, and then, you did a great job, but there's kind of this breaking them down. And so it sounds like it's also helpful, though, to maybe not have that with film.
Yeah, because I think sometimes, they want to impose the rules, of filmmaking on you, kind of, which is, there's good things to know, but also like in order to be a filmmaker, I think you have to have your own art or style or point of view. And so sometimes I feel like some people's opinion may come out too strong as far as guiding you.
Sure, and it can be damaging.
Yeah. So it helps to be encouraging, for someone to say, this is what you could do next time. And, it can help open your eyes on different ways to tell a story.